Yes, hello everyone. Welcome to another video today. Today we're going to be talking about loan rules and a lot of things about the RSTP, as you can see from the thumbnail. So I'm Gaucho Bear, FIFA license agent. So today I'm back again to give you guys some details about the topic for those who are preparing on the FIFA agent exam. So today I'm going to be looking at loan limitations, unregistered players, disciplinary sanctions, overdue payables, contract stabilities, just cause termination, spotting, just cause, and compensation with calculation. So as an agent, this is under RSTP. Most of these things are coming under RSTP. RSTP is the regulation statutes on transfer of players. So I'm just trying to give you guys some little bit of details about this so that at least you get an idea of how to prepare for the exam before I'm hosting some calls. So, oh, I see three people popping up. So if you're watching and you're new here, just leave your name and where you're watching from. That would be great to know where you're watching from. So if you pop up on the here, just try to leave your name and where you're watching from. What if you're a FIFA license agent or you're trying to take the exam? It would be great to know. Okay, and so these are the things we'll be discussing. Today. If you have anything, you can always leave in the comment section. Then I'll get back to you. I'll try to answer you. So that's what we'll be doing. So let's start and let's go straight into it. Article 10, loan rules and reintegration. So when we talk about a loan, normally, basically, most people always know that a loan is when you loan a player to another club and then the player stays there for a certain amount of time. Then probably when at the end of the season, the player returns. Excuse me, but there are certain things that happen within a loan that I'm going to give you a little bit of details about. So let's take, for example, when a loan ends early or something goes wrong, the former club must reintegrate the player immediately. So what does this mean? So it means loan a player. Let's take, for example, I'll give Jadon Sancho. It's a loan from Manchester United. He's loaned to Aston Villa. So let's take, for example, that something happens badly, then Aston Villa doesn't want to continue with the situation. They find an agreement or they find a way with Manchester United for Sancho to return. So Manchester United, who is the parent club of Sancho, must reintegrate the player immediately and put him based on he must start collecting his salary back based on the contract he signed for Manchester United. So that's what we call reintegration. So if there's let's take for example, so if this doesn't happen, then there's a breach of contract and the player, let's take for example, in this case, Sancho must be compensated. If the club refuses to reintegrate the player, let's take for example, the club is trying to get rid of the player. If the club refuses to reintegrate the player, of the FIFA rules will be applied, which you can try to check on what on that. What does that mean? So the club will get suspension because you must reintegrate the players. So there are measures to reintegrate the players, but as soon as Aston he came back from loan to Aston Villa, that would be the first thing with immediate effect to reintegrate the player to the club. So that's how FIFA rules states, and that's one thing with loans. So these are things you have to understand about loans. Okay, then we talk about the next thing we talk about loan limits. This is from July 1st, 2024. Now, pay attention to this because this is also like exam materials. So one, a loan can be applied only. I mean, loan out. Let me say we have first loan out maximum of players are 6. Let me say we have maximum of players who loan out are 6 now. I think most people don't know this. Loan in players maximum are 6. So what am I saying here? Which means a club can, in a particular season, at any given has maximum of 6 players to loan out and maximum of 6 players to loan in. So this is some of the kind of things you can find in the exam that they ask that what is the amount of loan a player can a club can have. You can only have maximum of 6 players, and you can also give out maximum of 6 players. Any way you have to try to, any ways you try to manipulate it, it has to be maximum of 6 or maximum of 6 going in or maximum of 6 going out. So you cannot have 7 loan players in a season. So that doesn't work. So let's talk about the exception in this case. The limit does not apply if the player is under 21 and the player is club trained with that club. So we'll give an example. This doesn't apply. Let's say this is an exception. Let's take, for example, if Kobe Mino, who plays for Manchester United, goes on loan because he's a trained player of that club. What do we talk about a trained player? A trained player of a club is someone who has made 3 seasons in the club at a club before turning at a specific age. So let's take, for example, Kobe Mino came to started at the academic of mine at a very young. So same like Alejandro Garnacho used to play for Manchester United. He was a trained player for Manchester United because he made more than 3 seasons at Manchester United. Okay, not with the first team, but I'm saying he made more than 3 seasons. So they call it like you're a trained player. But anyways, to stick loan situation, these are only exceptions. This exception doesn't apply if the player is if he's a trained player of that club. So I hope you understand this. Okay, the next additional restriction, the next is a club can only loan 3 players to the same club. Okay, so what does that mean? So let's take, for example, if Liverpool and Aston Villa are doing a deal, they can only loan just 3 players in the same club. They can loan just 3 players in that club. So if Liverpool want to give many players to Aston Villa on loan, maximum is 3. And vice versa, you can only receive 3 players from another club. It's straight. So I hope these things get into your ear so that at least you understand the rules and regulation. So the next thing we'll talk about is unregistered players. Unregistered players. Okay, we have 2 people watching. Where are people watching from? And if you can leave your name, and if you're trying to be an agent or you're already an agent, that would be nice to know. And if you have any question, you can just stop and put it in the comment section. I'll try to read and know what the question is, and then we can tackle it. But as I said, if you have time, you can drop your name and everything. Then we go from there and know whether you're watching from whatsoever place, or whether you want to be an agent or you want to be, or you're already an agent. Let's say so. Okay. So let's move on to the next, unregistered players. Unregistered player, if a player is not registered but plays an official game, that's not that's sanction. So the player played, that's an illegal listen. So when we talk of unregistered players on, let's take for example, it can be players on trials. Those are unregistered players. Or so most players who let's take for example, a registered player is a player who has a contract with a club. Okay, so if a player is unregistered and plays an official game, there are consequences for that. There are sporting sanctions will be that have consequences that you might face. You will face consequences for that. So the club will receive possible punishment, and also a possible punishment for the player as well, that the player can be banned by the association or the competition organizer. So so that's next. We'll be looking at disciplinary sanctions after transfers. So before even coming to that, I'll just try to drop back to the unregistered players. You know, there was a case that happened. That's the African Cup of Nations. I don't know, most of you people watch the African Cup, who was the African Nation Cup, but there's this player that played for Congo. There was a player who played for Congo that they said it was illegal. So that he didn't have to play. And he played. Congo eliminated Cameroon. Congo eliminated Nigeria in that tournament. So this case, okay, this is a good example because let's take, for example, that player was an illegal player. He didn't have to play the game. But Cameroon had been knocked out for World Cup qualifiers, and then Nigeria has been knocked out. How do FIFA handle this case? So now it's a tricky one because when FIFA went into the looking, even if the illegal, now this player has played a lot of qualifier rounds. So if FIFA has to take that judgment, then they'll probably have to go to take out to reinstigate Cameroon, reinstigate other countries that Congo knocked out. So the judgment of this is probably just going to stay like this, but the player, if found guilty, will be sanctioned with very huge, and the association will be giving very huge fines and huge sanction, one that will be more severe. Okay, so I hope you understood that because sometimes you have to look at the consequences of. I think FIFA had to go and then they're trying to they'll look at the consequences of what is in play and what how. Let's stick to what we're trying to do here. I just wanted to give an example so that at least you can feel how this work. Okay, now let's look at overdue payables. Clubs must pay players, other clubs on the time as agreed in contract. These are overdue payables. But now I know this, saying this here because having been in this industry, I know a lot of this happen. What I mean a lot of this happen is that you get a contract with a club because there was last time I was speaking to, there was a father of a young player who sent me a message on LinkedIn telling me, okay, hello Brian, I would like you to handle my son's case. I would like you to handle my son's case. My son had signed a contract with a club, but he's never paid. But he's not paid. So how do we solve this situation? So you have a contract which everything is written official, and then the club doesn't. Then that the club which you sign the contract doesn't pay you. What happens here is you have to find a way to, you first have to inform them officially, because let's take the first 2 months, if you have not been paid, then the next 15 days you have to send them a message or a letter that telling them that this is the decision you're going to take if they don't pay a salary. If they goes on, if that goes on, then you have the right to breach that contract by not going to training, by not doing everything. There you have what we call just cause for termination of contract, because they haven't paid you 2 months salary, then you have given them a written notice. Still, they haven't reached to any order. So these are the rules that you have to follow. So I actually explained it to the parent that this is what you and your son have to follow, because they signed for a club in Turkey, but the club paid them the first 2 months. Then the next time they didn't pay, they stopped paying them. But I know this happens a lot. A lot of players go through. A lot of players go through this. That you sign a professional contract, then the first few months your salary start passing, but the next, after some time, it doesn't go through again, and because probably the club wasn't expecting things, the club is having some financial difficulties, or not only sometimes financial difficulties, sometimes in certain countries, before paying a player, they try to look if that player has an agent. If the player doesn't have an agent, then they undervalue the player. So this happen commonly in most clubs. In most clubs, that you sign everything is okay. Then you arrive the first 2 months, everybody's happy with you, you're playing and everything's nice. You get your salary month, and the next month you get your salary. Then after the number 3 months, let's take for example, you don't see any salary. You go probably to the president office, they say or who pays the salary said the person has traveled. This is how it usually happens. The next month they say the person has traveled. All these things happen because they undermine you, because they feel like, okay, you have no backing power. But normally the way you handle these cases, you try to be more professional. and write them a notice after you write them a notice after 2 months if they have stopped, if they have not paid you 2 months salary. You write them a notice telling them, giving them 15 days that they should solve the situation. And if they still don't speak to you or do anything, you have the right to take it to FIFA. And taking it to FIFA is you have the right to breach contract to say you'll stop training because they haven't met their conditions. And then when you take that case to FIFA, those salary will be paid back to you. The club will be fined for that. So this is how you handle these cases. So this is what I spoke to the parent, that you have to do this. You cannot just quit without giving them a notice. If not, FIFA is going to rule. FIFA is not going to rule on your behalf. So these are certain cases that players faced. But let's come back to those are the things. I'm just trying to explain this in person because explain this so that you understand. But these are how the exam can be set. But you have to understand this. You have to understand this well to be able to interpret it when writing the exam, because there are certain questions that will come like that. They are just basic common sense. Okay, let's look at, let's continue. We're on overdue payables. Clubs must pay players, other clubs on times agreed in contract. If a club delays payment more than 30 days without valid reason, sanctions can be applied. But the key, the creditor must pay the club must put the club in default writing, as I was just explaining, and giving them a notice. Without this step, it's not official overdue under FIFA rules. And the possible sanctions can be coming from a football tribunal, warning, fines, and all, ban, and all whatnot. So those are the things that happen. Okay, let's move ahead. Also, okay, so that we try to catch up with time. Contractual stability. Okay, now contractual stability. So, simple, a contract can only end when it expires. That's one. That's when your contract ends. That's what we call contractual stability. This is these are not emotional decisions, but these are the only ways a contract can end, unless one person breaches the agreement based on just cause. What I mean by just cause is based on that you have a reason to breach the agreement. Like the one I just said about payments. If a club doesn't meet your payments uh, based on contractual terms, then you have the right to breach, but based on having followed a procedure. Okay, so a contract can be terminated without consequences if there is just cause. That's what I was just explaining. Just cause means the relationship is no longer reasonable in good faith. Example, serious breach, abusive behavior is another one. Forcing someone to change terms. I remember this story before. Just continue. I said there was this story. Players go through, even at the highest level, they go through a lot of this kind of pressure, and then but we from outside, you don't know. So this story was from Henrik Mkhitaryan. He used to play for Manchester United. I think he was saying something in the lines of, when he was at Manchester United, he wasn't playing. Jose Mourinho wasn't playing him. So in the media, because from the outside it looks like everything was okay, but behind the scenes, Mkhitaryan said Jose Mourinho will often send him text messages in the night. Jesus Christ. In the night, he will send him text messages in the night saying that, Mkhitaryan, right, you have to leave now because I want to get Alexis Sanchez. So Mkhitaryan said at the first time he didn't reply. He just see the message, put his phone away, not replying, go back to training the next day, and he will see Jose Mourinho, because there are a lot of players there. Mourinho won't be telling him anything because, of course, cameras are always where they are training. So it's almost like he won't speak. But when it's like midnight, not midnight, but when it's almost like late in the evening, like this kind of time I'm speaking to you, Mkhitaryan will send a message from Mourinho, tell him that you have to leave the club now because I have to get Sanchez, and you can only leave before I get Sanchez because we have to trade you to Arsenal and Sanchez have to come this way. But Nikitaro said he ended up talking to Mourinho that I'm not leaving till my finances are made, all those kind of blah blah blah, all those stuff. But anyway, it was also a nice story to hear from people to hear from people that are like professionals say kind of things. So it's not always rosary good up there. They also face this kind of mental toughness or this kind of challenges. So that was one, just to let you guys know that also the professionals or the elite level professionals, Premier League players, they do face this kind of challenges as well. So let's continue from from where we left, saying that a contract can be terminated without consequence, just cause, and just cause means the relationship is no longer reasonable. Doesn't The relationship is no longer reasonable in good faith. Like what I mean by in good faith, like there are serious breaches, there's abusive behavior from one party, there's forcing someone to change terms, almost slightly like what Nigitaran was saying, force him out of the door, those kind of things. Terminate, that's an abusive behavior. So those are the kind of things that players face. Okay, and then the next one we'll talk also of is overdue salaries. So if a club if a club fails to pay at least 2 months' salaries, as we mentioned before, then the player has just cause to terminate. They say, okay, but if only he puts the club also in default in writing, giving them 15 days deadline, as I mentioned before, if salary is not monthly, calculated on a pro rata, but still, just to sum this up, not to go into more details, what you can understand here is because just understand that if a club doesn't pay a player 2 months' salary, the next decision the player has to do is to write to the club and say, hey, you give them 15 days notice. And if you give them 15 days notice, they still don't respond in paying your salary, then you have you have the right for breaching that contract. For breaching that contract. Breaching that contract means you have the right to not attend training, don't do anything again, just sit home, whether you're eating popcorn or whatever that you are doing, but you have the right not to train again. But now what you have to do is you have to take the case to FIFA and let FIFA know about the situation. Then FIFA will speak to the club, and that club is going to pay you back. The club will be fine because the club breached the contract, but that club is going to pay you back all the salary. But what you cannot do is that when the club stops paying your salary, you don't come that month. Like you are not acting like you cannot do it. Like you cannot take matters into your hand. You have to follow a certain procedure. So these are some kind of things that always come in the exam that you have to do it, because they can ask you that what if a club the steps, the measures you take. They'll put A, B, C, D, E. So one thing you'll be looking at is you say you have to follow these terms as I just mentioned, that you give them a written notes, and then before you take action. Okay. Then the next is sporting just cause. Termination of contract. Sporting just cause. So what is sporting just cause? So I'm going to explain this. So if a professional player plays less than 10 minutes of official matches in a season, he may terminate for sporting just cause. But case by case analysis must terminate within 15 days after the last official match of the season. No sporting sanction be applied. So now let's play this scenario. You have a player as an agent, then you send the player to, let's say, a club like Manchester United. The player is on the bench, he never plays. Then when the season finishes, that player, if he hasn't played up to 10% of the game, let's say if Manchester United was to play 100 games a season, 10% of 100 games are 10 games. It's 10 games. So if that player hasn't played up to 10 games, he has the right to terminate his contract based on just cause. But now, because most of these professional clubs, they know they have lawyers who handle this situation. So this is how the professional clubs bypass this rule. What they actually do is they look at the player. Let's take, for example, I'll give an example like Joshua Zexay. He plays for Manchester United. I want to give this example. He plays for Manchester United. If he plays less than 10% of the game because he's not playing the games at all, what the club will do is they'll put him 2 minutes into the game, bring him back out. I mean, 2 minutes, as long as you have entered that game, you have played already. That's or you consider that you have played that game. The next game is on the bench. When the game is when it's around like 5 minutes, or not 5 minutes, 1 minute, he gets into the field and play. So these are little ways that the club takes to bypass those rules. That as long as you're getting those few minutes here and there, you pass more, because it shows that probably you're playing every game. But let's take, for example, if FIFA was to adjust this rule and say a player must play, let's say, if there are 1,000 minutes in a calendar year for a player to play, and then the player must play 300, let's say 500, because you cannot just chop and change those little minutes and make it to be 500. But because when you say 10%, even if someone played 30 seconds, it shows that person has played that game. So these are the things that teams or football clubs try to take away and to bypass the rule. So as I said, a player can terminate his contract on just cause, based on sporting just cause, if he doesn't play 10%. But most of the time, you don't. As I said, the players get like 2 minutes to the end of the game. They put them there. Okay, so I hope you understood that termination based on just cause. So these are proper exam materials, and not only exam materials, even starting to manage your own players. If you're agent, things that you can already have at the back of your mind, that if a club signs your player and doesn't play, you know that your player can leave, or you can terminate the contract based on sporting cause or whatsoever. So this thing, you try to keep them into your brain. Okay, the next thing is termination during a season. During season, a contract cannot be unilaterally terminated during the competition period. That's period. That is protected stability. So there's no way you can terminate your contract during that time. That's stability to protect you and protect the club. Article 17. So termination without just cause. Now we are entering into serious territory. Okay, termination without just cause. If a contract is terminated without just cause, compensation must be paid, as we all know. If I use this positive interest principle, meaning the injured party must be put in if the contract was respected. So let's take, for example, I will come back, I will explain it more better. So termination without just cause. Let me explain. So termination without just cause is like a player just wakes up and break the contract without coming. Let's give an example, a player. There will be huge fine. The club will have to fine you huge fine, and you will have to face consequences of that. For any termination to be able to happen, there must be reason to terminate that. Something must have happened based on all these reasons mentioned for you to be able to terminate a contract. If not, you have no right to just terminate a contract. If not, whether you are the club or the player, you are going to face consequences of that. Okay. So final message, since we're almost coming to an end, this is make this short. I wanted to make this short, but sometimes I have to go into detail so that you understand these things. Yeah. Okay, final message to you people, anyone watching this. There's no point for you to terminate a contract unless there's always a problem before you see. If you feel the situation or the scenario you are in is so difficult, then you have the right to follow these rules that have been explaining to try to terminate your contract, because there's no gain in you or a player or you terminating a contract with a club, because if you unless you're in a difficult situation. That's the only advice I can say as an agent. Having read a lot of all these articles, it doesn't make sense. Okay, but that was it today. So I hope we cover this section, contract and stability and whatsoever. All this because I won't explain this and then just moving ahead. So tomorrow or another time, I'll be looking for another. We'll be looking at other articles to explain so that you understand before you go into the exam. But this, we're not using the structural approach. I'm just trying to give you a little bit of details. I'll be giving the structural approach based when I start teaching the courses, because there we'll focus on just exam scenarios and what to come, how you can pass the exam. Because as I said, I know the exam is tough. I know the exam is tough. So I already have a structural approach that I used also last year while teaching people, and I was happy that most people I taught quite made it, and it was a proud moment for me. So this year, same structural approach. I'm going to give people the same guide, structural approach, what to do, how to tackle the exam, knowing how when getting the exam is 60 minutes, how you can find the questions you don't know on the book, because it's an open book exam, but most of the time you don't use the book because it's that difficult. I mean, because you have no time, because there's exam and anxiety and exam pressure that you forget about the book and you just want to do whatever you're doing just to finish. So with this, I don't want with this. If you prepare well, then you don't have that exam pressure because you know how to manage your time. Anyways, guys, that was it for today's session, and tomorrow I'll be back here, and then I'll explain to you people and other stuff. Okay, take care and bye for now. Cheers.